I like that thing. I approve of that thing. That's a good thing. More on polishing the bones. More on. We were on chapter 3, I think. Yes. So now we're on chapter 4, which is called First Dreams and Drawings. As I recede to the rearmost part of my vehicle. First Dreams and Drawings, chapter 4. The morning after our first extended meeting, Laura returns to my office. We had planned this because of her long commute. A friend of hers living in a nearby town had welcomed her overnight visit. Entering the office, Laura seems physically comfortable with good eye contact, expressing no hesitation to begin our session. At the end of her initial phone call several weeks ago, I had encouraged her to remember a dream that might arise before our initial face-to-face session. Today we will have time to look at this together. Laura is not aware of the great significance of the initial dream, the one she has before our first session, although I am, as we enter this session. In the beginning of a Jungian analysis, the initial dream is seen as a commentary on the state of the individual's psychic organization. It is prognostic, and it is a communication from her unconscious to me, her therapist. It is also information for her if she is able to pay attention. This initial dream describes her concerns and often indicates direction in the analytic work to come. Taking out her notebook, Laura reads the dream she had after our first phone conversation, before we met face to face. She also shows me small images that she sketched after writing the dream in her notebook. Laura reads these dreams aloud to me. Dream: the stones. 4 a.m. Image: 6 small stones lined up, tied together, on a cord. 6:30 a.m. Image: a monolith, partially buried in sand or earth, large, dark, heavy. From Laura's notes: floods of tears, crying. I can't bear to be disconnected. Want to stay connected forever. Wish to arrange the stones in a meaningful way. Make some sense of what is happening. Upon waking, sensed only the rock without the landscape. Back to sleep until 9:30 a.m. when the landscape idea, not in the dream, came to me. Very unusual to sleep this long. All summer and fall, been sleeping less and less, 3, 4, or 5 hours, until this week. Represents what is dark, hidden, too enormous to lift. But the top is uncovered, clearly visible. The work I have been doing on my own? The stones represent the arrangement of my hopes for relief to come from working with P. Crying as I write this. She sits in silence, looking down at the drawings after reading. I listen as she reads the dream. I listen to the selection of her words, her vocabulary and sentence structure, and the dream images, symbols. I study her facial and bodily expression and notice how she is breathing. I watch her as she shares her carefully drawn, delicate pen sketches. These sketches are her attempts to illustrate her dream images for herself and for me. Drawing is a way of communicating below words. Laura indicates this notebook is specifically used as a dream journal where she makes small sketches and records her thoughts, reflections, and emotions. She brings so much of herself here so soon. For this I am very glad. It is unusual for a patient to commence her work in such a well-prepared manner. I see she is in the habit of recording her inner life and expressing herself through art with no outside prompting or encouragement on my part. I welcome her dreams and drawings. I feel happy she can share so much of herself. My trust in this process of healing relationships within a life is stirred. I hope that I can reflect the essence of my long training for her benefit. I know that healing is an ongoing life process. Analysis or psychotherapy is not curing. Problems may be solved along the way. There is no cure for being a human being. Laura hands me the page of pen and ink sketches. I hold the page of images on my lap as we prepare to reflect on these first dreams, actually a pair of dreams, that rise out of her unconscious. First, there is an image of 6 small stones that are connected, held together by a cord. The stone is indeed a profound symbol, the basic foundation, the mineral matter of earth. I see that a cord is connecting the 6 small stones. The second image drawn is Dream 2, a monolith, a rectangular-shaped solid rock rising out of the earth and sand. This single immense stone is partly exposed, partly hidden. It appears that Laura's psyche has a language rich with ancient symbols. Many people have trouble remembering dreams, and with patience must learn a process of remembering and valuing these subtle messages from the unconscious mind. Few people initially report dreams with this elemental weight or gravity. Laura, who already practices recording her dreams in a journal, has just brought profound archetypal images, stones and a monolith, ancient symbols of the totality of self. Human life is brief, and stone suggests eternity. Stones represent the indestructible material of transformation. Laura has brought a dream, uncovering stone. There is a solid core within, and the mystery of life is starting to be revealed. We sit quietly with the drawings for some time. It is important that she reflects upon the images, feeling them, sensing them in her body, and accessing memory. Emotions and feelings need space for expression. Sometimes it is too difficult to put this into words. Her wealth of thoughts and feelings may not surface initially. Most of us have to learn to focus our attention inward to remember dream images and notice bodily feelings. We need to find a way to express and describe our internal experiences that are generally invisible to others. This requires a felt sense of safety in the presence of another person. I am aware that my relationship with Laura is in a beginning stage. While waiting for Laura to return to words and make comments, I am seeing in my mind and reflecting thoughts to myself, not spoken aloud to Laura. I see collected and organized stones on a cord, and second, the partly revealed monolith, an enormous rectangular-shaped stone. The 2 images appear to be static and solid, although perhaps hewn or shaped by human hands. The composition of stone is mineral, composed of highly organized crystalline forms visible in their complexity only with microscopes and other magnifying equipment. Seeing the structure of stone is well below our normal level of awareness. Stones are ancient prehistoric records of the beginning of time of the earth. Discovered in many places, the monolith, an exceptionally large standing stone, was erected by early humans and generally associated with spiritual and religious meaning. Laura begins her analysis by bringing dreams echoing the history of the planet's core elements from the universe, the cosmos, and she also brings her personal history to these images. With these dreams, I feel the rich potential ahead if Laura is able to access and make use of the vastness offered to her by her unconscious. Laura begins to describe stones and then the monolith in a landscape. Both are in a context without people or other obvious life. She says, the first image of 6 smaller stones on a cord shows some form of organizing by someone. She continues, the cord is some kind of material, maybe woven threads or skin. Sinew? It's stringing the 6 small stones together. I'm not sure what it is, what it's for. Being an artist appears to allow Laura access to visual imagery, a gift. I am thinking to myself that this image signals that there is an unseen organizing capacity in the unconsciousness. The cord or thread has the function of relating and connecting 6 smaller stones. I choose not to share my reflections now. From past experience, if I do, I am likely to interfere with her responses by directing or by inhabiting her own inner work. It is important that Laura does not depend on me to tell her the meanings. She has to find her personal meaning. There may be an appropriate time in the future for me to share my thoughts and amplify the meanings of these symbols gathered from many cultures over time. She reads her reflections from her dream journal. The stones represent hopes for my relief to come from this work. Belonging to a group is essential to me, Laura says. She then describes her passionate wish to belong, to be connected to others. While I'm observing her, she shifts her voice tone from passionate expression to a quiet appraisal and reflection. Inwardly, I am thinking that stones on a cord were used as primitive counting devices. If such a cord is tied end to end, it may be used as a necklace, a rosary or mala, meditation beads. Sacred internal utterances or prayers are made as the user touches the stones. I am reminded of linear time, division and sequencing of hours, days and months. I also think about the passage of time as an eternal circle. Stones on a cord indicate division. Could this be the division of time? The whole or eternal present is divided and then marked by the stones, like knots. Laura begins describing her personal associations, quite different from my thoughts about the stones. I am reading a book of essays by Susan Griffin, A Chorus of Stones, The Private Life of War. She is writing on the meaning of war. I'd like to read a small piece to you. She reaches into her bag and takes out a well-worn paperback book and turns to a dog-eared page. She reads, all history, including the history of each family, is a part of us, such that when we hear any secret revealed, a secret about a grandfather or an uncle, or a secret about the Battle of Dresden in 1945, our lives are suddenly made clearer to us as the unnatural heaviness of unspoken truth is dispersed. For perhaps we are like stones, our own history and the history of the world embedded in us. We hold a sorrow deep within and cannot weep until that history is sung. She stops reading from the book, places it on the couch next to where she is sitting, and looks at me directly. Speaking quietly, she tells me that her hope is for relief. She waited a long time to begin this exploration of her own inner life with the help of a Jungian therapist, a trained analyst. She tells me that she had some psychotherapy years ago in the wake of marital and family issues. The doctor was a warm and helpful man. She felt it was a positive experience. She has worked with her own thoughts and feelings internally and has read widely for many years. She had begun to discuss the ideas of Carl Jung with her relative in California who is a psychotherapist and found that helpful. Laura relates that she was deeply impressed and began to read and inform herself about the psychology of the unconscious. She stops and then says, "At this same time, out of the blue, I received the phone call from Alex." She begins to describe to me her experience of this unexpected transatlantic call. The call was unexpected, shocking. It served to open a well or tomb of feelings. In her vulnerable state, Laura felt compelled to take the risk of opening herself in therapy. "It was at this time I realized that I needed outside help. I called you," she says. I am aware that Laura has returned to her description of why she decided to enter into an analysis. A broken heart. She is revealing her deepest emotional longing. We are beginning the work of weaving her personal history with unresolved losses and needs, building a trusting therapeutic relationship together, and moving into working with her dream material, her relationship with the unconscious. The image of the Court of Stones acted as a bridge to her memories of World War II, Alex, loss of innocence, family deaths and losses. We move on to the second dream, which contains the image of a dark, heavy monolith, which is partly buried in earth and partly exposed. I am looking at her sketch. Laura expresses that the monolith in her dream is awesome and evokes feelings of mystery. Now, in relation to this specific image, she talks about the 1968 film 2001, A Space Odyssey. One of the important opening scenes includes a monolith. She felt the image was awesome, an intersection of human evolution, the history of war, religion, art, and science. She reflects on her husband, Eugene. In the 1960s, he was a scientist working in optics. He'd immerse himself for days and nights, working for NASA. Much of that time, he was away working with telescopes. For a time, he practically lived in Hawaii, says Laura. I held the family together and worked part-time. I really missed him. I felt so lonely. The image of a very large, smooth, black, rectangular monolith is used near the beginning of the film. The setting was a vast plain in prehistoric time. The ape-like creatures were depicted at what seemed the dawning of consciousness and the discovery of tool-making for hunting, for brute superiority, and for survival. The ape-like creatures encounter a large black monolith, partly buried in the earth. At first, they are terrified, then they ambivalently approach it, showing awe. They were also curious, Laura says. I am now more aware of the great importance of the monolith in Laura's dream image. I remember not speaking of this to Laura, that I too saw the film in 1968 and was very moved. I was living in Washington, D.C. and saw it at a small art theater. The Janus, the name for the image of dual masks of tragedy and comedy in ancient Greece, the human condition. The story is about a space journey with danger, secrets, conflict, murder, advanced machines, and mystery, and maybe reincarnation, Laura says. I hear urgency in her voice and listen deeply as she remembers details of the story aloud. The main character is an astronaut, facing a crisis on a spaceship that is on an important mission to seek intelligent life associated with the discovery of a large black monolith on the moon. On board the spaceship, the astronauts begin to sense that the highly advanced computer they name HAL, heuristically programmed algorithmic computer, has its own divergent plans. HAL takes control of the spaceship and shuts down the life support for the astronauts and scientists on board. The last astronaut surviving, the story's hero, is finally able to disarm HAL's higher artificial intelligence programs, as one might perform a lobotomy on a human. The astronaut escapes immediate death. He travels alone in a small spacecraft, drifting toward Jupiter. The vessel becomes caught in the planet's gravitational fields and travels at warp speed, outside the experience of time as we know it. This is depicted through dramatic visual effects. Inexplicably, the astronaut finds himself in a strange, very formal room with echoing sounds. He recognizes himself in a mirror and now finds he is a very old man. Instantly, he is sitting alone eating. Next, he's in a bed, rapidly aging, and then dying. An enigmatic fetus simultaneously appears in an orb floating in space with the Earth below, suggesting that new life begins. I know that the film uses powerful archetypal symbols and themes: monolith, journey, cooperation and conflict, war, outer space, cosmos, galaxy, universe, infinity, death, and rebirth. As I listen to Laura telling the story, I hear that the story, symbols, and the time of the 1960s are profoundly meaningful to her. This story links many levels of personal and collective meaning simultaneously. Her initial dream is giving me a significant glimpse into themes of deep importance in her life. She is not fully aware of the significance now. She begins to share her own associations to the mythic symbols of the film and her dreams. The monolith in the film seems to be describing something mysterious, awesome, something possibly placed there by more intelligent life, Laura says. The ape-like creatures are afraid at first, then are drawn together to reach toward or touch it. Maybe it's about our beginnings as humans. Maybe we are always drawn towards something we can't understand. Laura's dreams of the stones on a cord and a monolith have an ancient quality. We look at her drawings together. I feel, and it's hard to put this in words, the presence of mystery as we contemplate this cosmic mythic story, her dreams and associations. She's remembering this period of her personal life, creative work, marriage, and family. She is beginning to gather and narrate her history, her own life story. She's telling me about her life through her memories, stories, dreams, images, and associations. Beginning early in this treatment, we are barely beginning to construct a safe container or trusting relationship. It is not the time to amplify the symbols, which would be quite interesting, although distracting now. It is the time to be present with her experience, to listen to her language, tone of voice, her descriptions of her history, and the landscape of her inner world. I pay attention to my feelings. I am moved. Every person has her own inner geography of voices and images, themes, stories, and characters. Archetypes are hypothetical, theoretical constructs of universal concepts and themes, such as story, father, mother, teacher, journey, marriage, war, and love in the unconscious, naming only a few. We each have our own way of seeing and clothing or dressing the universal forms of myths and stories within our specific culture, historical epoch, and collective psyche. My mind, my psyche, is stimulated by her drawings and descriptions of the film's archetypal themes. Beginnings and endings, evolution, life and death, universal mystery, time, past, present and future, and the journey. The themes in her story evoke the ancient circular symbol of the Ouroboros, often depicted as a serpent whose body forms a circle as he bites his own tail. Is it self-devouring, eternal, or both? It is a symbol of self-containment of all beginnings and endings, the carrier of all within itself. Laura's dream and her associations to a personal and culturally important film remind me of the circular, self-contained process we all experience universally. Birth and death, confronting conflict and mystery in the journey of life, relationships with others, and our aloneness, our individuation process. Alchemy, as used in Jung's psychology, based on a medieval form of chemistry, is a symbolic process describing psychological transformation and maturation in an individual. The work of holding the tension of the seemingly opposite experiences, the physical material world, including our body, and the spiritual experience, is necessary for transformation. Jung's theories describe the work of psychological transformation of unconscious patterns by raising them to consciousness, through working with dreams, imagination, discussion, and memory. Individuation is the personal expression and journey of a life. Analysis can become an analog or parallel process to the symbolic medieval art of alchemy, the object of which is transformation of the lead of unconsciousness into or toward the gold of illuminated consciousness. As described in ancient alchemy, the negredo is the beginning of the process. It connotes darkness that is barely penetrable, chaos. One's mind is dense and can be dull, without illumination or understanding, and one's mood is experienced as heavy, depressed. Psychologically, depression is a symptomatic experience associated with this heavy darkness. I feel that Laura's dream monolith, dark and heavy, describes the beginning of her alchemical process. The unconscious, with its darkness and chaos, is the beginning of individuation. In other words, this is the process of her coming to consciousness, to know, accept, and possibly transform, and be transformed in and through dreams and life's journey. In Laura's dream, the image, the monolith, is partly revealed and partly hidden. The source of all images is buried deep within the unconscious. I note that there are no humans or mammals present in her initial dream. It presents the mystery of life on Earth and possibly beyond. The cord could be used as a tool. I wonder to myself if we are glimpsing the ancient idea of the mythic philosopher's stone. Symbolically, the philosopher's stone is a substance that the medieval alchemists believed could be used to convert lead into gold. Listening as Laura touches upon the images and their meaning to her, I ask, why now? Why do these images appear now? Laura takes her time to answer. I don't know. The place in the dream feels ancient. I suppose that is why I have come here, to unearth myself. Laura weeps for what seems a very long time as we sit without talking. My intuition is that this dream landscape is also a description of her profound and deep loneliness as a human being. She is feeling stored sadness from so many experiences in her history. It is easier to remember and discuss the high times and the excitement of her creative career. Now the fatigue from her life's heaviness, her work, the pain of losses, and her current depression are very much in her consciousness. The images put forth by her psyche describe her interior experience. In tears, Laura says, I cry when I read the dreams out loud to you. Why? Pondering this for a moment, I answer, when you read dreams to me, you have an invested witness, person. You do not need to take care of me. Perhaps this allows you the space for your own feelings. Gathering her sweater and small cloth bag for her notebook, pen, the book she was reading, and her car keys, she gets up and slowly walks toward the door. I'll be staying tonight in Arlington, she says. My friend Elizabeth offered me a spare room and doesn't require that I visit with her when I get in late. I'll have time alone for reflection and reading. Looking at me tenderly, she sighs and adds, Thank you for being here. I feel the weight of her depression and the intensity of her suffering, and I wonder what lies ahead.